Welcome to Raising a Beautiful Mind, the podcast where we have real conversations about youth mental health to empower families and transform systems. Today's guest, Akanksha Bhatia, that sappy writer featured in the BBC, Cosmo, and Fortis India. Welcome to our next episode where we have the sappy writer. That sappy writer. I want to introduce Akanksha, who is coming to us from Delhi, India. Hi, Akanksha.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to learn more and talk to you more. When I was on your site, the Instagram page, it's all things anxiety. And that really, really spoke to me and got me really, really excited. Can you talk a little bit about how did you get to this point to become an influencer for anxiety? What was maybe your story leading up to wanting to do this?
So I started That's Happy Writer, as you can tell from the handle, probably as a writer page, because I grew up writing. I grew up with poetry. I grew up, those quotes on Instagram. I think that's what the account started with. And I had a particularly bad panic attack. I was living alone at the time. It was a really bad day. So I decided to share that on my existing public account.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I saw how people related and how they responded and the kind of feedback I got. A lot of people didn't have anyone to talk to about their mental health. They didn't know how to start that conversation. So gradually, That's Happy Writer just became a diary for my anxiety and for my bad days. So people out there know that it's not just them. They're not the only ones having bad days, and I'm not the only one having a bad day. It's a universal experience that we have together, and I think it's just started as a way to create more awareness and to get rid of the stereotypes that surround anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said during the pandemic you felt your anxiety increasing. Has anxiety been something that you've always struggled with, or was it fairly new with the pandemic?
So I got diagnosed quite early, like I was in my teens, around 16, 17. Maybe I had it before that. It just never was on the radar. I had a really particularly bad panic attack. My parents are very supportive. They took me to a doctor right away and they were like, we'll figure this out. We'll get you the help you need. And then I was put on medication for a bit and I got the right help. I got therapy, all of that. And in the pandemic, I was with family, so I think I was better off. I had the right kind of support system. Yes, it was bad because we couldn't step out, but I made a safe zone for myself. But also, I think a lot of people who were stuck alone, who were living in spaces where they couldn't get out by themselves, it was very difficult. And I found a community of people like that on the internet where we would speak to each other, where we would make each other feel better. We would discuss our pandemic stories just to get rid of that suffocation that we were feeling after a point.
Yeah, absolutely. And the feeling of anxiety, especially when you're going through it, can feel very scary. It can feel very isolating. It can feel like you're the only person on the planet that's experiencing this. So when you mentioned you have your safe space, you've created your safe zone is what you said, since this has all started. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of those things that you do to help keep yourself feeling healthy, feeling safe, the things that you do maybe even when you're not feeling anxious to help minimize the future anxiety or panic attacks?
I think when I started getting panic attacks regularly, it taught me that the problem at that point was I wasn't making time out for myself. I was working, I was attending college, I was constantly doing something. And when you have anxiety, you have a certain amount of guilt attached to not doing anything. When you're sitting by yourself, you think, if I'm not doing anything, I'm being unproductive, I'm wasting a day. And it drives you to the edge sometimes. And I learned the hard way that you have to take out time for yourself. You have to take out 2 hours, an hour, maybe a day, just to do something for yourself, just because you enjoy doing it. My safe space is that 1 hour I probably spent in the evening after work doing something I like. It could be reading, light a candle, read, do that cliche, rom-com moment for myself where I would just sit and read and probably have
Mhm,
a nice drink or
mhm,
a cup of coffee
mhm,
and feel good. That you are forcing yourself to be happy, but over a period of time, it becomes a habit
mhm.
to create that safe zone for yourself, to create that 1 hour for yourself, which you look forward to at the end of the day, because I'm going to be happy in that 1 hour. That's guarantee. I know. So
Yeah.
you just look forward to that, no matter how bad the day has been.
Yeah. So you started to talk a little bit about what your anxiety looks like and how it manifests for you. Can you talk a little bit more about, how do you feel it coming on? Is it really sudden? Can you talk a little bit about
Um,
that?
I think I've experienced both sides of that coin.
Mhm.
In some cases, it's been a build-up. I may have had something happen to me like a week before, and
Mm.
I've been thinking about it, and I've been thinking about it. I said something to someone. Someone said something to me, and they probably forgot about it, but I would be thinking
Right.
about it for like 5, 6 days ahead, and that
Mhm.
probably the sixth day it would be like a panic attack,
Yeah.
and it just hits you. But
Mhm.
and sometimes it's just in the moment when you're sitting by yourself and you're just thinking about the day, you're recollecting, and suddenly that hits you. My anxiety has a lot of physical symptoms. I get breathless. I start shaking a little bit,
Mm.
and I think cold sweat, stuff like that. I it's a very, sometimes I don't even realize I'm anxious. But when that happens, it's like, oh, okay, it's coming on, it's coming on. Okay, what do we do now? And
Mhm.
once you have been with your anxiety for a while, I think I've had it for like a decade now, you
Mhm.
learn little things to make it come down almost immediately. I have my little exercises, I have my music, I have um, probably just like take a nap. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
just that you sleep deprived, just take a nap, your anxiety will go away. And I'm saying it's different for everyone, but for me that works for sure.
Yeah. Oh, you've said so many things. I have so many questions. So you said that sleep deprived. Are you able to now, like a decade later, you've been doing this for a while now, are you able to identify your triggers? Do you know, or can you talk a little bit about those and how did you, I imagine it didn't just happen overnight that you're like, oh, today I realized that here are all of my triggers. What was
I
that experience like?
I think I'm still learning,
Hmm.
definitely. And as you grow older, you realize there are different situations that come up and there are new triggers that come up all the time.
Yeah.
But for me, one major trigger that I have overcome slowly, not completely, but yes, a little, is crowded spaces. I couldn't be in crowded spaces. I would get very claustrophobic, and that would raise my anxiety levels. Loud noise, loud music. I was never the kid who would deliberately put myself in a situation which was like, I don't know, a frat party. I That's not happening. It's just, it never happened for me. And
Mhm.
I think over the years I have pushed myself to get a little more comfortable with people I know. If you put me that in that situation now, I probably wouldn't be anxious. But again, in a room full of strangers, loud music, not gonna happen. It's like an immediate trigger. Sometimes it's something as simple as, oh, I'm running late, but I can't find a cab. And that triggers you. So I think new triggers come up, but then there are things that you know that you can deliberately avoid. I try not to go hungry, like for more than like 3 hours. I keep munching because if my
Mhm.
tummy is not well, my anxiety comes up. If I'm
Right.
anxious, then my tummy is not okay. And that's like a very correlated thing. I think in mental health, that's the first thing they tell you. If
Mhm.
your gut will always tell you when you're anxious.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
No, go on.
and I think over the years it's become easier to handle, easier to deal with. You find your breathing exercises, you find your little uh, quirks that help you. But overall, because it's not something that should hold you back, and I don't believe it is something that's permanent either. You learn to live with your anxiety and you learn to live despite your anxiety. And I think that's how it should be.
Yeah, that's really well said, that you learn to live in spite of your anxiety because your anxiety doesn't define who you are. Yeah. So many things you have said. So talk to us about your support system and how did you, again, assuming that you didn't just wake up one day and everybody understood how you were feeling and knew how to support you. Can you talk about that journey a little bit?
I've had very supportive parents. I think when I first told them I have anxiety and I've been having panic attacks, and the first time I had a panic attack in front of them, they got really scared. Like, what's this? We've never seen this happen to anyone. Because at that point, this is 10 years ago, no one was talking about mental health. No one
Mhm.
wanted to talk about mental health, especially not in India. So they were a little taken aback, but they've been very, very good support systems for me. They will always understand if I say, "Oh, it's a bad day," and they make little changes throughout their routine to make sure I'm feeling good despite what I'm going through, and that's
Yeah.
very sweet and that's very
Mm.
nice of them. And I've always had good colleagues over the years. I make it a point if I'm joining a firm, if I have a manager, my manager will be well aware of my panic attacks. They'll know exactly what to do. They'll know how to help me. They'll know where my medication is. I have SOS medicine, so they'll know where that is. And
Nice.
I make sure I give them that information right from the start because I don't want them to feel startled or scared when I have a panic attack.
Yeah.
Um, Same with friends. I have had really nice friends. I have sometimes fainted because of my anxiety and in public spaces. And I think I've had great people who've been like, okay, we know exactly what to do to get her up and going again. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I've had really good support systems over the years, and I think I've found a great family on the internet as well. Instagram's been a great platform for me to talk about and to get the kind of, I think, validation that I was looking for when
Yeah.
I was going through it initially. But yes, support system's very important. Your friends, your family, my brother, all of them, they've always been very understanding and very concerned in their own way. Even when I decided to live by myself, right after, like, I think it was 3, 4 years after I got diagnosed, and I think they were apprehensive in the beginning, but they always told me that it's not something that's going to hold you back.
Mhm.
You'll learn, you'll grow, and it'll be okay. And it has been.
I love that. I love that so much. And I want to talk about your Instagram account in a second. But I'm curious when you said, you faint in public and people, your friends, your family, they go, "Oh yeah, we know what to do." How did that happen? Were there conversations or what were the conversations that you had? Do you have like a written down plan? Talk about that. That's
I
interesting.
I made a post on my Instagram for my future flatmates. I just moved into a new place and I had two people I was living with at that time. And I made an Instagram post for them, which was like a guideline to living with me. Like you
Nice.
have like certain steps that you have to take when you're living with me. And it's not something huge. It's just, oh, if I'm having a panic attack, bring me a glass of water. And as simple as that. And I think with my parents, I didn't need to have that conversation because it came quite organically. I was growing in front of them. I was dealing with it in front of them, so they read up on it. They educated themselves. I educated myself, and we just spoke about it, how I was feeling every single day. When the medication was being reduced, they were there. They were talking to me. We were discussing it together. Um, but so with my family, I didn't actually have to have a conversation. With my friends, it was quite straightforward. When I moved to a new city and I made new friends, I just told them, "Oh, this is something that happens to me, and if you have any questions, check my Instagram page."
I love that. Let's talk about this Instagram page because this Instagram page is clearly your voice. It is clearly your not just way to express yourself. There's more to it. I love your Instagram page. Why don't you tell us, I mean, what do you see that Instagram page as? What is that really for you?
It's my diary. It's my little journal. When your therapist tells you you should write down how you're feeling at the end of the day, I do that on Instagram. And I think it was a coping mechanism initially, but it became a lot more when I started getting the feedback I was getting. When people started relating to it, when someone said, "Oh, I had a similar day. Oh, this happens to me too." I remember I put on a reel which said, "I can't make my bed today. I can't. It's not happening. I've tried multiple times. I just can't get up and do it." And
Mhm.
it was very irrational, as people say,
Mhm.
but it was happening. And
Mhm.
a lot of people responded to that saying, "Oh, that happens to me too. Sometimes it's just so difficult to do something so
Mhm.
small." And that sort of became the identity of that page, to just tell people that you're not alone, that you're not doing this by yourself. I
Mhm.
had this series that I did, which was Dear Anxiety, which were little letters that I had written to my anxiety
Mhm.
about how it made me feel today.
Yeah.
And it was it was a way for me to vent out, as well as treat it as not to treat it as an enemy. My anxiety was not my enemy. It was something that I was living with. And you don't want to live with someone you hate. So you make it a part of you and you grow with it and you nurture it and you take care of it, but you fix it. And
Wow.
that's how it works for me.
I am mind blown. I love that. Your anxiety is not your enemy. And so you have to figure out how to work with it and live with it. Wow. That is a really powerful way to think about it, you know? I'm gonna be thinking about that. I'll wake up at like 2 a.m. and I'll be thinking about that again. That's amazing. So what did it feel like, I guess? You started this Instagram, kind of a diary to yourself, but then did people just start finding you? Was it the hashtags? How did
I
it
think
start to grow? And then what did it feel like to hear people say, "Oh, I can relate to that. I go through that too."
so. I think in the pandemic, a lot of people started talking about mental health, and I'd already been doing it for a few years before that. Um, I did my first article came out with BBC. They interviewed me for about anxiety and pandemic, and that sort of became a thing. And a lot of newspapers started reaching out to me. A lot of magazines reached out to me. I did a few interviews. I did a few reels. Did a few sort of quote unquote brand things, and I'm not someone who is comfortable with that in most cases. So I just sort of steer clear of anything brand related unless it's something which is like an NGO or a product about mental
Yeah,
health. I sort of don't get into it. But
right.
so that for me was just, oh, I'm talking to people about it and raising awareness. And that was the goal behind it. There was nothing more. As far as people coming out to me and saying, oh, it was so good. I felt that I understood that completely, made me feel good that I wasn't alone, that I could make someone feel good for a second about what they were going through, that I could, in some way, give them some encouragement to talk about it to their parents, to their partners. And that was very important because in India, it's a taboo of sorts. And not everyone gets the same response that I got from my parents.
Mm,
Uh, it's very, most of the messages I get are, how do I tell my parents I'm going to therapy? How do I tell my parents I'm talking to a therapist? Because they will not accept it.
mhm,
And in most cases, all I can say is sit them down, have a good conversation. And if it's still not going the way you want it to go, then take them with you for a therapy session and they'll understand. And maybe your therapist will be able to help you and mediate the conversation, because that's a professional. Again, I'm not. I will only
yeah,
be able to tell you something as a human being, as someone who has been through similar things. And so the goal is always to make the process easier for people, because getting diagnosed can be very difficult. The growth is difficult, yes, but the initial impact that hits you when you hear it for the first time,
yeah.
that can be very difficult if not handled properly.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about mental health in India. Can you talk a little bit more about what was your experience like getting diagnosed, getting treated? Have said many a times you were very lucky because your parents were supportive. Not everybody has that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I think it's grown over the years.
Mhm.
I saw a major shift after the pandemic, but before that, no one wanted to talk about therapy in India. No one wanted to discuss. It was very exclusively for those who were struggling with their mental health on very, how do I say this, on very different levels, not anxiety, not depression. It was usually, oh, you're suicidal, or you're a danger to society, or things like that were things that were considered important enough to go to therapy for. But anxiety and depression was just a state of mind, was just, oh, you're just overthinking this. Oh, why are you so negative about everything? And that's the response you would usually get from people around you. And I did get that from a lot of people. I mean, not my immediate, um, you know, circle, but people outside that. There were a lot of people who judged me when I started talking about it, and who told my parents even that, tell her not to talk about this on the internet. No one's going to marry her. And that was a legit response that I got. And that is
Yeah.
a very common response to get in India. No
Mm,
one wants to hire you if you have anxiety. No one wants to marry you if you have anxiety. You're talking about it on the internet. People can Google your name and find out that this is what you do.
mm,
And so that was initially a big sort of, how to say, roadblock that came out. And that's something that a lot of people in India face. But after the pandemic, because a lot of influencers, celebrities, people in power started talking about how their mental health had been affected during the pandemic, it sort of became normalized. A lot of clinics popped up, therapists started going on Instagram talking about it. It became a movement in India. I think a lot of people who spoke about it after me have been doing great, have been, you know, probably more popular now, probably doing better stuff. And I'm so, so happy that it's come up, that people want to discuss it, that it's this entire, um, how do you say, this wave that has come in India has been amazing to look at. I have spoken to a lot of people about this. One of my best friends, her mother-in-law is a therapist, and I have these great, great, amazing conversations with her about how much has changed, how many more people she's been seeing, and how many more young people have come forward and spoken about it. I think there has been a shift after the pandemic, but before that, I wouldn't have. I completely understand the people who reach out to me and say that they don't want to talk about it to their parents, because it wasn't easy back
yeah.
then.
How's it feel to be a part of this movement? Like you're a trailblazer.
I think that's a little bit too much. I wouldn't
You're
call myself,
modest.
but it's been very encouraging. I This is not my day job. I have something I do. I have a full-time job. I run this as simply something that makes me feel good. That is something, just my little part in a very big space.
Mhm.
It's very important for me to make sure that this was not all for nothing. My anxiety was not for nothing. It helped some people. Even despite the fact that I had to go through it, it helped a few people who were also going through it, and that has always been very important for me.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I mean, the world is very lucky to have, I know you don't say trailblazer, I do. Because it is, you're right. When you talk about the stigma and the consequences, they can be very real for a lot of people, whether it's, jobs, getting married, I mean, all sorts of things, because the stigma, as much as we continue to see progress, it still exists. And
Yeah,
like you said, for COVID, that started conversations for a lot of people. But a lot of us know that mental health was an issue long before COVID and will remain an issue long after, too. So, when you talk about this channel, this Instagram handle that you created, and it started as your diary, and you've had all sorts of feedback, and it continues to rapidly grow, who are you seeing? I mean, it kind of to me feels like you've created a community. I mean, do you see some of the same people, and what when I say what types of people are you seeing, young or old? Are you seeing any similarities, or is it all sorts of everybody?
I think mostly it's younger people, people who are in college, people who have just moved out of their homes, and gained a little bit of freedom to understand that they can start getting help with this. When you're staying at home in India, most kids do continue living at home till their mid 20s, even in their 30s. Some continue to live with their parents even after they get married. And for for a lot of people, that fear of being judged by their families, by their extended families, is overpowers their need to get help. And there is a trend of younger audience who go out of their homes to study, who get that newfound independence and understand that now no one's going to stop me from getting help. So let me get help. When they're around younger people who are more, how do I say this, educated about mental health and encourage them to get help, it becomes different. They learn, they grow, and when they reach out to me and ask, "Oh, I'm living in this city. Do you know a therapist in this city?" I do have a list of people who work in different cities and who have no prejudices and who are genuinely helpful towards younger kids or the LGBTQ community, who have no biases of any kind. So I usually redirect them to the right people. And if not, then I put them across to a platform which is online. Even if they can't go to anyone physically in their city, they can always find someone online. And so, yes, mostly it's younger people. In most cases, it's people in the LGBTQ community, because in India, that is again still sort of a taboo. And so yes, younger audience for sure. Yet I do have a few people who constantly give me feedback and very constructive criticism as well. But
Oh,
I have never had any negative feedback on my page ever.
good.
I've always steered clear of making any comments directly towards people, and I think everyone's been very respectful towards me in the same way.
I love that. So do you feel like you have a community on that Sappy Writer? Like, does that Sappy Writer have its own, like, do people engage with each other and they know each other? They go to your posts and they see familiar faces, in terms of other people commenting. Are you seeing some of that?
I don't think so. I think a lot of people, when
Mhm.
they talk about something like this, they want to talk about it in their own shell, and they don't feel comfortable discussing it with just anyone. I have noticed that, but yes, I do have a few people in the industry, like in by industry I mean in the profession of therapists or psychiatrists or dance therapists, art therapists, who have become very close to me over the years because we've collaborated multiple times and we've worked on projects or campaigns. And I think that is the community that I um, find myself close to, rather than people who seek out, because in most cases they don't want to talk about it too much either. They're not ready, and it can be very, I would say it's not my place to make them talk about it. So I just
Mhm.
guide them towards the right
Yeah,
people
sure.
rather than giving them opinions by myself.
Mhm.
And but I do have a very strong community of professionals who I'm very grateful for, because whenever I have something that whenever someone talks to me about something that I'm not equipped to handle, I know I can message five people and ask them, "Oh, how am I supposed to respond to this? Please help me." Or can I put them in touch with you? Could you please talk to them? And I've been very grateful for that.
Wow. Well, you're creating like your own resource hotline kind of. Do you advertise that? I mean, do you put that on posts saying, "Hey, if you need help, I've got a list and I can help you," or how does that work? How do people even know to
Uh,
ask you?
most people just message me directly and I put them across to people. Yes, I do have a few very specific people in different cities that I do share on my stories whenever they're doing something new, whenever they're doing some workshops. I'm always sure to share it on my stories to make sure that people know that these events are happening, that these discussions are taking place. Even if most of them are online, then they can connect. And I try doing that as much as I can.
Are all of your resources in India?
Predominantly, yes, because that's the audience that I have in most cases. But no, I do have a lot of resources online as well, uh, who work with people of different age and I would say nationalities.
Okay. And then are most of your, well, you have to have a more diverse audience coming in. It may have started locally, but I know I'm on there and I'm not in India. So are you finding that your net is being cast bigger, wider, and you have more people coming in from all over?
Yes, it's been happening. I think especially after the BBC article, I got a lot of messages from people, I don't know, in France, in UK as
Mhm.
well. And it was a very different sort of take on mental health because they were so sure about themselves. They were so sure in like, oh yeah, I do have to get help. That's obviously the first step. And
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, that's amazing. You are so confident with this. And I think it's just when they hear so many people around them being so comfortable with it, it's a different reaction. Uh, in most of the people who reach out to me in India are like, "Oh, I don't even know where to start. What do I do now? I've been feeling this way. Is this anxiety?" And it's a very different sort of language and a sort of the ideas are very different, which come from India and which come from people outside India for sure.
Mhm. Okay, that makes sense though. That makes a lot of sense. So, to your point about young people saying, "Hey, like, what do I do? How does this?" A lot of the people that we have listening are adults that are supporting some of those young people, whether it's parents, caregivers, mental health professionals themselves, educators, college professors, people in the community. And a lot of times I get a question of, I don't know how to support that person. I don't know what to do. What would you say to them?
I think the best thing that people do for me is to not treat my anxiety like it's a weakness.
Mm,
It just makes me feel like I'm putting pressure on someone to take care of me, and no one wants that. So
mm,
you have to give. I'm not sure about children, but I think as a teenager, when I was diagnosed, for me, it was give me the tools to handle it, but do not handhold me through this journey because I'd never learned them. And I will have to leave home and I will have to make a life for myself. I will have to start a job where you may not be there all the time. And it's very necessary to equip everyone with the means necessary to take care of themselves when they have a bad day. But again, it's a gradual process. It's not something you could throw someone into almost immediately. So in making them independent is very important. Being empathetic is very important. Don't make them feel like they're ruining your day with their anxiety. I think that was a very big fear for me right from the start when I was living with my flatmates, when I was living with my parents. It's like I hope me waking up feeling anxious did not ruin your day because you noticed.
mm,
And you have to reassure them that no, it's fine. You'll be okay, and we're okay, and the day will get better.
mhm,
And act as normal routine as possible.
mm,
And last, I think it's just a matter of kindness. I've always stood by that. If you're kind, then they're never going to misunderstand you. If you're genuine and if you're concerned and if you're nice about it, then I think human beings are very easy. We want is someone to smile and say, it'll be okay. You'll be okay. And it's as simple as that.
that's so spot on. I love that. And that's right. I agree. Kindness can go a long way, can't it? So when you say that, equip people with the skills to deal with the anxiety, can you talk about some of what that looked like for you?
So for me, the first thing I learned was I don't like yoga. I don't like meditation. So
Uh-huh.
it sort of sent me in a spiral. When I was meditating, I was able to shut off and I used to sit and overthink for like an hour when I was meditating. And it's very important to understand that something different would work for everyone. It's not a
Right.
one shoe fits all, right?
Right.
It's very different for everyone.
Mhm.
And people who guided me in that moment and told me, oh, if this is not working, it's fine. You're not bad at taking care of yourself. It's okay if you don't like yoga. It's fine. I took
Mhm.
up boxing instead, and that worked wonders. It was amazing for me. It was zen. And I had to give up boxing because I got diagnosed with carpal tunnel.
Oh.
And they told me to leave because I was a journalist. I was typing all the time. My wrists were weak and boxing was not helping. So I had to leave boxing. But then I found another way to deal with it. I started stitching some stuff, or like took up different hobbies every single day. Then became walking, running, jogging, going out with people, reading a book. Now I'm in that zone where I just read by myself and like I said, light the candle, read by myself, be all rom-commy by myself. And it's very empowering to do that. Oh, I'm an independent woman. But when you're equipping people, I think it's very important to tell them that there are multiple ways in which they can deal with the situation. I have a few exercises that I have learned have worked for me for sure. I have my breathing exercises. I have this breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in,
Yeah.
breathe out. And that works amazing. I count ducks because that's distracting.
Yeah.
I just shut my eyes for 10 minutes and think about something really nice that happened to me, and it automatically boosts my mood. But these are things that came to me because I've been here for a decade. Not everyone's going to find it right away. Not everyone's going to get it right on the first try. All you can do is tell them that, oh, so what if didn't work? Here's part two. Here's round three. Here's round four. And we're going to keep doing it. And I'm going to keep supporting you till you find what works for you, till you find the activity that helps you, till you find the medication that works for you, till you find that sweet spot that is just right. And that support is more important than actually giving them the tools, I think.
Mhm.
Equipping them to handle is very important.
Man, when are you going to write your book? I want the first copy autographed. I love that. So what are the next steps then for That's Happy Writer? Do you have plans? I mean, maybe you are going to write a book. You are a journalist.
Yeah, that has been on the cards for a very
Mhm.
long time. But like I said, this is not my job. So I do have a job, and
Yeah.
it's been very difficult to make time for it. But right now, I'm not looking to expand it or to make it something which is very entrepreneurial. Like it's supposed to be, it's not a business. It's
Yeah.
just me. I
Yeah.
don't have any help. Everything I do is by myself. And for now, I'm very content with what That's Happy Writer is. But of course, I'd like to do more. Of course, I'd like to collaborate with people more. I have done a lot of work with various NGOs, with a lot of student bodies and universities in India, with IIT Delhi, with different spaces, just to talk about anxiety. But I think as long as I can do that, I'm fine for now. But I'm young. I'll figure something out. We'll do something in the future again.
You are young, that's for sure. And I wish I was this astute when I was young. I wish that I understood my own anxiety. I wish I understood how this all works and to have the skills and what I needed to create a safe zone. And so I have the utmost admiration that not only have you really been intentional and grounding into what you need, but that you have been so kind and generous to share it to others too. Because sometimes we think a movement has to be something huge and you have to have 18 million followers, or you have to be like, a governor or a president or a prime minister of something. And you don't. Sometimes we can make the biggest impacts in the smallest of spaces or in the most unexpected of spaces. And so I think that you have done tremendous things and you're only just getting started, which is just wild to me. So if you could say anything to others that are either struggling with anxiety or they have a loved one that they're trying to support, what would you say?
I think um, it's what I always say. It's like be kind, be patient, treat yourself with the love that you are expecting from others. It's very important. You are not your enemy. Your anxiety is not your enemy. You are growing, you are learning, and it'll be okay. There are a lot of us out there, and we're all learning how to be better at this. It's very important to be kind. Just remember that you're nice at the end of this. You're a good person, and no one can change that.
Wow, isn't that the truth? The most profound. We need to print it, frame it, hang it. That was such a beautiful way to kind of wrap up everything that is you. So, for everybody listening, if you have not already followed at that sappy writer, you need to go do it right now because it is one of the most insightful and dynamic accounts that you will feel wrapped around with support, strategies, just love in all sorts of ways that we all need. Because, as Akanksha said, at the end of the day, it's about being nice. It's about being kind. And that's really what matters. So I want to thank you for being here with us today
Thank
and
you.
sharing your experience and your insight. We are all so much better for it.
Thank you so much for having me.